You just need a steel thread that runs from your data right through to your application where you're trying to do these more advanced techniques, and then you can get going.
Okay, today I'm joined by Stephen Hardy, and Stephen is a partner at Bain Co. Stephen, welcome and thank you for joining me today at Digital Edge in Sydney.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to chat to you. Now, we're talking here today about how AI is changing the way organisations approach personalisation and digital engagement, but I'm going to get to that in a second because your background is really interesting. The early part of your career, you earned a PhD in astrophysics from Sydney University. This was back in the 90s. And you were also a fellow at the Max Planck Institute for Astrophysics in Germany. Yeah. My first question is, what drove your interest in the universe and celestial bodies in the early part of your career? Because I'm interested in were you always interested in space as a young person, or was it something that you kind of fell into?
I had an experience when I was about 11 where my father had a little telescope and he pointed it at Saturn.
Yeah.
And I looked at Saturn with its rings, and I was kind of sold on space from that point onwards. Yeah. And then as I went through school, went through uni, discovered that science is actually really good at explaining things. And part of the way I kind of think is I like to understand things from the bottom all the way to the top, right? And you can't get much more fundamental than physics.
Absolutely.
So that's where I
ended up there. Now, in recent years, you've taken, and I have seen Saturn through a telescope, and I understand where you're coming from. I've seen a couple of other planets too, so it's really, really amazing. Now, in more recent years, you've taken on data analytics and engineering roles at the likes of NICTA, CSIRO. You spent almost 4 years as an AI advisor at a consultancy called Ambiata. You were the CEO there as well. And you've been at Bain for 2 years now. At what point did you start to make the decision to start focusing on data analytics and AI and the impact that these technologies have on Australian organisations?
Yeah, so that comes back to this science idea that you can actually do experiments and understand how things work. And I've always seen data analytics as a method of trying to apply the scientific method to organisations and customer and design and experience. So it's really, how do you actually understand what's driving things and have some proof? So you can say, oh, this drove this and this drove that, but unless you run an experiment, you can't actually tell. So,
yeah, absolutely, and that makes sense. Now, they're sort of moving on to AI and ML technologies and how they're changing the way that organisations approach personalisation. Can you talk a little bit about the companies that you deal with there at Bain? What are leading companies doing that I guess others are not in this particular area? There's a lot of talk about this morning.
Yeah, so personalisation has classically been done using machine learning. So it's very causal. You basically go, okay, this is what we think. We're going to drive a personalisation. We're going to choose this stimulus for someone and see how it works. More advanced organisations right now are using generative AI in that process. Like how to, they're actually personalising messages, getting the machine to work out exactly what the shape of an image should be, what the placement should be, when it should be shown, how it should be shown. Yeah. So that's the more advanced people. And then the people right on the bleeding edge are looking at how to use agentic AI in this. How do you actually get agents to make this go faster and faster? Yeah. So it doesn't take you 3 weeks to come up with a campaign and get it in market. You can do it in a day. In a day, yeah. Right, so that's kind of where the really advanced people are pushing.
Yeah, the sky's the limit with agentic AI, and I think that no one really knows where it's going to go. It's very, very, very hard to predict. Yeah. But hopefully it's better than it is. It's going to end up better than it is now. Now, data quality issues are a major barrier to scaling AI and ML. And our data shows that most of the data leaders that we speak to and digital leaders rate their organisation's ability to use data to improve customer experience as moderate to poor. Yeah. A lot of them, I've spoken to hundreds of chief digital and data officers and CIOs over the years, and not a single one of them says that they've got their data story sorted. Yeah. What's your advice? What do they need to focus on to make sure their data is ready for these innovative technologies as we move forward?
Yeah, so I've also talked to a lot of CDOs over the years, and the first thing I think is that people need to understand what the design of their system is. What are they actually pushing for? Are they looking at something like data mesh as an example where it's a bit of a buzzword, but are you trying to get people who are expert in the data to curate the data? Right? Yep. What's the system of organisation for your data? Yep. When you've decided on a system of organisation, you can then just think of it use case by use case. So if you want personalisation, well, do you have a customer 360? You don't have to build the entire thing. You can start with a chunk that actually you can activate, generate some value, move on to the next chunk. So it's really about the sequencing of the improvement of their data assets within the framing that they've decided on. And that's really key. And it means you can get going, deliver some value, get some quick wins, take the next step, and you're not stuck in decisional paralysis around the data's not good enough, I can't do these things. You just need a steel thread that runs from your data right through to your application where you're trying to do these more advanced techniques, and then you can get going.
And I guess that means doing things in smaller chunks too.
And getting the right sequence of chunks, because some chunks are going to be useful across multiple applications and some only one. So you want to get that sequencing right.
I want to talk to you about how AI and ML is marketed at the moment. So obviously when we talk about AI, we're talking about software that can complete tasks that normally people would do. Right? That's the nirvana. ML is about machine learning from data and making decisions without further programming. I think people often get the two mixed up. Where do you see both having the most impact on our work going forward and society for that matter?
Well, that's a big question. Right? Societal impact will be huge. There's recent work from Stanford came out last week talking about two axes: what experts think AI will be able to automate and what people want to be automated in their jobs. Right? And there's something in every quadrant. There's lots of things in every quadrant. And in fact, the number of things in the we want it automated and we can automate it is much smaller than the others. So there's a mismatch of expectations. So that's kind of a foundational piece. On the ML, AI, generative AI and agentic AI piece, ML is very much around how do you make decisions, how do you make predictions with quantified uncertainty. Right? Generative AI is, to me, largely about input and output. You can understand unstructured data, you can understand text, you can produce images and video, etc. Agentic AI is rising now because we've got reasoning models. They're only a year or so old. And the frontier of AI is very jagged. They're superhuman in some narrow fields, but sometimes right next to that there's something a child would know is wrong that comes out as an output. Right? So it's a very jagged edge. Right? So you have to be very careful about how you use the more advanced things as we move into agentic AI to make sure that you're accounting for that jagged edge so you don't get yourself into trouble. And that's like all about testing, software engineering, all the things we've been doing for 20 years. We just need to keep focusing on quality.
Absolutely. Now, I'm asking you this last question because you are a physicist, Stephen. I want to know what your view is on whether or not you think that we're going to reach some sort of technological singularity at some point. I say no, because I don't think that my view is that machines won't get to the point where we won't get there because they don't have emotions, they don't have reasoning the way that we do, they don't necessarily understand nuance. What's your view? Because people do talk about the singularity as the end point here. Do you have a view on that as a physicist?
Well, I don't lose any sleep over it. And that's because I don't think the current model of the way large language models work scales in that direction. Right? And there are a few things that I think that needs to do better that will come very soon, like memory. They don't remember things, well, the way they remember things is a kludge at the moment. That won't take very long to fix, I think. There's the world model, why we get these weird images and videos where it physically doesn't make sense. Now, robotics and AI combined will probably help that. But what you talked about just before around actually reasoning the way we reason, like generalising outside of all the data they've been trained on, really not clear how that's going to be solved.
I agree.
And until you sort of see a path, and I actually suspect we'll need to take a couple of steps back before we can move forward. So I'm certainly not saying never, and I definitely agree that the AI we're using today will be the worst AI that we'll be using in the future.